discuss and if necessary, take action on services agreement with LN Professional Management LLC, doing business as medical management professional, for laboratory services, right?
And we talked about this at the last board meeting, and I know y'all authorized Ron to sign the agreement if he was comfortable, but he wanted us to come back to y'all and talk about it some more. And we've involved Kevin Reed's firm, particularly Trent Krinke, in this process, and he sent us a letter that has his concerns, and then I want to try to match those with what we've done in the contract. Then I will say that also that we sent the MLP's contract to Trent, and he put in his comments, and they've included every one of those in here with a little bit one little bit of exception. I'll show you what that is. But first of all, from Trent, their concerns. He said laboratory arrangements such as those described above carry risks. So the hospital should be aware of these risks, consider them before entering into such an arrangement. Below is an overview of several of the risks. And Michael's the lab expert here, so I'll get him to help me. But the first had to do with the anti-kickback statute, the Stark Law, and False Claims Act. And this is particularly relevant in terms of governmental patients. That's where the real risk is with Medicare, Medicaid, and any other governmental patients. And those have all been excluded in the contract. And the language in here specifically addresses that, is that we'll accept no patients that are covered by Medicare, Medicaid, any other government coverage, and then also noted that any secondary claims were with government entities. We would not accept those, and we have the authority and the right to decline those patients if they're presented to us. Michael, that's
correct, yeah.
Okay.
So basically no Medicare, no Medicaid, and none of the stuff like that. HMO, I mean the Humana or Medicare and things like that, we will not be testing.
But as you've read through this, there is specific language in a number of the different areas of the contract, specifically excluding all those patients. So we think we've got that. We think we've got that pretty well covered. And one of them has to do with licensing. He says, in your arrangement, we understand some laboratory and phlebotomy services are performed off campus and not under the license of the hospital. They question that, but our read on that is that the drawing is done somewhere else. You know, the patients are not presented here. You know, the patients will be drawn, and you know, they mentioned Corpus Christi, for instance. Apparently, they got a pretty nice network down there. But from our perspective, we do this fairly routinely anyway. So we do lab for home health or for some of the other entities, and you know, we try to cover that with our performance review.
Yeah, so one of the particular things in there is the quality of the specimens you're receiving. So we'll set up a PI and monitor the quality to make sure we're getting storage times are adequate. We're receiving specimens in the amount of time and that they're received, you know, properly, whether refrigerated and we'll continue to monitor that and make sure that we're getting quality specimens in.
The other one said it had to do with the Texas Solicitation of Patients Act, and this is a state law which is very similar to the federal Stark laws in terms of referrals. There is some risk. I will say that one of their comments is that, as explained above, it is questionable whether or not the arrangement is permitted of the anti-kickback statute. We talked about that for Medicare. It said although the Act, the Texas Occupational Code 102, is seldom enforced in Texas, it provides for both civil penalties, and then they go on to say that it is very seldom addressed. comments on that in terms of?
Well, just from the note from Kevin Reed's office by Trent that the statute apparently is seldom exercised, but it does provide for civil and criminal penalties if they find that there's a violation. I suspect that if it did come out somehow, they would probably come to us and say, "You got to stop." You know.
Well, so my understanding though of a violation would be if we were steering business to this company so that we get a piece of the action on the backside, right?
Well, it works the way the statute reads. It's to or from, so it covers both directions. You know, it's like I said, it's there. They don't want people referring. It's I don't know if you can compare it to the legal profession about referring clients a non-attorney cannot refer a client to an attorney and be paid for it. My understanding, and Ray and Michael can address this to a greater extent, is that this company that we're considering entering into this contract with is going to identify practices. It's a clinic of several doctors or whatever, and say, you lab services done, blood analysis done, et cetera. And I don't know if we covered this before, but they already have a working relationship with Breckenridge.
Yeah.
So we would be the second one, so they'll just determine where is best place to send it to get analyzed. And to me, I think one of the benefits that they're looking at is instead of taking Michael, a week or two to go through Quest
3 or 4 days, you got to turn around.
or LabCorp and that sort of thing, that they're looking at hospitals such as us that can do a turnaround in, say, 48 hours or whatever. And then also have the ability to talk to a real person if somebody needs to follow up on something, whereas like, I think Michael mentioned, if you call Quest, I don't know, I'll have to refer you to somebody they don't know, and you get the long distance runaround sort of thing. So I think part of it is, to me, is providing a better quality service to whoever is needing the lab work done.
And most of these, from the look of the lab that we're doing, they're like health screening panels. The screening panels it's kind of a broad, it's not specific disease testing or anything, it's more of a wellness panel is primarily what we're doing.
So do you think that our risk of being subject to somebody trying to manipulate the system for kickbacks is low, or what?
Related to this specifically, though, I'd say, and with the other items that we've addressed, specifically with no Medicare, Medicaid, or any governmental programs, that reduces our risk significantly. And we think with this Texas Solicitation Patient Act that there is, we'll make you aware, there is some risk. We think it's low. They say it's seldom enforced, and we think worst case scenario is they'd come in and say, you got to shut down the program prior to any fines or findings in that regard. That's our read on it.
Is Breckenridge a county hospital too?
They're a district. They're also a district.
Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another company that's doing it. This isn't the only company that's out. There's another one out of Metroplex that we've heard from too. So this is kind of a new thing in lab services. They're not the only ones out there doing it. So.
Well, from an anti-kickback standpoint, it would seem like if we were soliciting business, we would want to take that business on directly rather than run it through another party where they're taking part of the profits. So
We think that gives us some protection, although it does say, directly or indirectly. We think since we're not dealing with a physician, and certainly we're not directly dealing with them, which would induce any referrals or additional work done to us. So we think it gives some protection. The next thing they bring up an issue of insurance fraud, and their concern there is that I guess that if we're doing 2,000 tests right now, and we're billing Blue Cross for 1,000 of those, would the volume be significant enough that it would raise a flag with Blue Cross to say, you know, hey, something's going on there because their volume just tripled? We don't think that volume's there, and the other piece of that is, we're such a small entity anyway that, you know, we're doing, how many tests?
We do about 10,000 tests a month,
So,
total, and, you know, we're looking at adding potentially, what, 2,000 there, so.
3%, that's not, we don't think that there's enough there to raise any significant red flags. That's our reading.
Your concern there, I guess, would be if you start doing a whole bunch, say Blue Cross is one of our better contracts, Blue Cross would come and say, you know, they would throw up a red flag, then they'd come look at it and say, well, we'll just change the contract. So that's the, you kind of.
Then they have suggested practices. The third party, the MMP, are responsible for providing certain management services which are listed in the contract, and they're just saying make sure that they're following the contract from our perspective, make sure they're providing the services that they say they're going to do, and they're not just out there collecting a fee and not providing service. So that's just one of the things that said to monitor that and make sure. The other one is to make sure things are done at fair market value. Well, ours are going to be at fair market value, and I'll cover that a little bit more here, but in terms of what we get paid, it's going to round out to we're going to be paid 25% of the net revenue, which will come to us. We're going to do it on a per fee basis, but it's going to be adjusted on a quarterly basis back to a 25-75 split, and that we just want to make sure that it's at fair market value. But the services that we're providing will be off of our fee schedule. There will not be a separate fee schedule or any changes in our fee schedule.
I think the fee schedule kind of helps too. We're getting paid for the service instead of taking the split of what. So by establishing, it'll take us a little while. I think they put a provision of about 6 months to establish once we kind of get a feel for the pair mix, and we'll adjust our fee scale to where we're at that 75-25 split. We'll kind of adjust. It's not a real, I say a real broad menu. There's probably 12 tests that they run, but for those of y'all that might be familiar, they do a complete panel, and it has a CBC, a CMP, the thyroids, some of the hormone testing. There's a lot of tests on each one of those, and there's a few other things. Like I say, most of it's screening. They do men's health screening, women's health screening, which are most of the hormone testing. But I think over time we can adjust the payer mix and get it adjusted where we have a flat fee scale and we're not. There's a provision right now for a cap, so basically quarterly we'll look at where we're at and kind of shore that up and get it to where it needs to be. But I think within 6 months we can establish a pretty good fee scale where we're pretty close to that 25-75 split.
The other things that lab services performed at the hospital, we'll be doing 95% of the tests here. We'll be, you know, there'll be very few tests, if any, that we're not running here. And what this is there are some of the programs out there that are basically just buying the provider number from the hospital, and they're sending all their tests, you know, through that provider number to a reference lab. This is not what this is. We'll be providing the services here, you know, at least 95%. Very few of the tests that'll be on their panel will not be able to do them here. They'll have to be sent to a reference lab. But that was a big flag that Kevin and him had, but we're going to be doing the tests here.
One of the kind of advantage to that too is there's a lot of tests that we don't have enough volume for right now to justify, but this program, if we get the samples coming in that they say they are, there's probably about 10 or 15 tests we will bring in-house because they will be able to provide us the volume. So in turn, that would allow our physicians here access to those tests too. Estradiol, APOs, the cortisols, a bunch of the things that we don't do a whole lot of, but it would be nice to have them here in-house. So for us, it's not a big expense. We have the reagent pack to do the instrumental run pretty much all the different tests, but we just have to, our initial pack, we have to do linearity correlation studies and stuff, and then after that, that's pretty much our only cost of bringing them in-house. But we just have to have the volumes in the past to justify it. It's not justify those.
The next item is specimens drawn at the hospital, by the hospital. We covered that a minute ago. You know, that is a risk. You know, we're not doing, but we will have the PIs in place to assure that the quality is there. And I think that's all we're looking for there. Billing, the billing will be done, it'll be done by a person that their employee should be here next week to visit with Charlotte Winters, our business office manager. But it'll be done through our provider number, through our computer system, through CPSI. But our business office manager, Charlotte, will have the ability to go in and look at anything prior to it being sent, or to audit it on a regular basis to make sure that the billing is appropriate. And this is an expense that they'll pick up, but we don't pick this up. But the billing will be on our provider number, but we have the ability to audit it and to make sure that it's being done properly. They talk about the, make sure it's a short-term arrangement and that there's a no-cause termination. That's one of the changes that we made in here. It is a one-year agreement, and it needs to be no longer than one agreement, but there is a no-cause termination for 30 days. So either party can terminate without cause for 30 days. There's also provisions for if there's for cause and a cure of those. But the main thing here is that he said any such arrangement be fair no more than 1 year. Hospital should have a right to terminate the contract without cause by providing 30 to 60 days advance written notice. Well, it's 30, so it's the minimum of that. So we've covered that, which really makes it, you know, a 30-day agreement. But we got that covered, and that was a change which we suggested and which they incorporated. No federal payers. We covered that. We covered that extensively in the contract. They bring an issue of make sure there's not any impact on the cost report. We don't think that since we're not doing any Medicare or Medicaid, we think any cost report issues would be minimal. And then last, it says we strongly suggest that you meet with the board and that you secure board approval prior to entering into the agreement. We're covering that right now. Any questions on the items which our attorney asked us to address?
Talk about the billing again.
Okay. The billing will be, okay, there's one fee schedule, and it'll be on our fee schedule. The billing person will have access through CPSI, and will access and bill through our provider number. Now, we're setting up a separate department so that we can identify the lab that comes through for this program, as opposed to lab that's on an outpatient basis or inpatient basis. But it will be billed on our fee schedule using our tax ID number. But Charlotte will have the ability to go in and review the billing at any time. She'll also have access to it. And what we're trying to do and trying to make sure of is that we restrict the biller's access only to the lab billing. And that's, working with CPSI to make sure that
Because
works.
it's their biller.
It is their billing.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so actually, I think it might be even a third party, independent, but we will, as part of bringing her in, we'll bring her through the HIPAA. She's got to go through all the HIPAA, the
Right.
pre-employment stuff and get checked up on all that before we grant access. So it would be kind of the same as if we outsourced our.
And so we'll have an auditing process in place,
Yes.
not just the ability to do it, but we
Oh,
will do
yes,
it.
yes, Charlotte.
So she understands that piece of it, so I think that'll be.
Okay.
We had the option of doing the billing ourselves as opposed to using, a third party. And frankly, just with our staffing shortage that we have now, we decided to go this way. They're going to pick up the cost. On the fee piece of it, we get the fee per test, which then is reconciled quarterly to 25%. We also get reimbursed any direct costs that we have, reagents or any associated with the program.
Any idea how much revenue this is gonna possibly bring in to make it worth our while?
Yes, I mean, they're talking optimistically about 2,000 tests a month. I think we're going to cut that in half, just to be conservative, but Michael, I'm saying, if it's 1,000 tests a month, about 50,000 a month would be, is that what you said?
No.
You tell me.
We haven't seen any of it, but I've got similar quotes from both companies, gave us kind of the same. And both of them, their estimate off the panel is about, we would make about 250 per panel at 1,000 to 2,000. So you're looking at 250,000 a month.
It's a huge number.
If the volume's there, I'm not betting, you know, like I said, you know.
What made you choose one company over the other?
This company, as far as, the other one came a little bit later, but the other company's initial thing was they just wanted to borrow our tax ID and we would never touch a specimen, and that's not, no. And they're doing that.
Let me borrow your social security number.
Yeah.
Trust me, yeah, okay.
So for this one, we're doing all the testing in-house, and establishing a fee scale and doing it just, we're acting very similar as a Quest or a LabCorp. For them, we're a reference lab that they're sending their testing to. We're doing the testing on a fee scale, you know, so much per test, and so.
Needless to say, even if the volume is much lower than they're telling us, it's gonna get us out of a hole.
Heard.
Well, you know, the problem is, like any other thing within healthcare, that's going to be subject to their ability to compete in the marketplace and the whims of their payers, and, I mean, you know, and this is one of those
Is
things
this
that
gonna
could start out gangbusters, and in 6 months,
I wouldn't bet the bank, I wouldn't bet the
Right.
bank. It's one of those, you get in, enjoy what you can, and if
What
it
is
goes
this
away.
company's track record? Is it an established company? Have they been around for a while?
This is a
Expanded?
relatively new concept that's coming out. There's a lot of startup that are just now getting up and getting going. I know they've got Breckenridge online now, and they're starting to run some specimens through there. The company out of the metro, this one, the one that we're going with, most of the specimens will be coming from South Austin, Corpus Christi, from those areas. The other company was more the Metroplex side of things. They've been up a little bit longer, it sounds, but not a whole lot, probably 6 months, if I'm guessing from the sounds of kind of where they're at. It's kind of a new concept that's out there, and like I say, eventually there'll probably be changes made to change it up or to cut the reimbursement to it, but, you know, take advantage of it while you can.
And
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
the gentleman that started this, if I remember correctly, did he say he, former CEO
Yes,
of
well, the Houston Hospital, I can't remember which one it was.
whatever, some,
It's the healthcare experience.
he knows what he's doing.
And the one that started, the one in the Metroplex was the former medical lab director for Better Scott and White, so.
They're throwing around some pretty big numbers, but we'll see. The one thing I wanted to draw your attention to on page 2 of the contract, section 3.2, there's where the only, I guess, inconsistency between Trent Crinky's contract and this is that the second page is within 6 months of the effective date and on an annual basis thereafter, the parties shall obtain an appraisal of the service fees. Because the way they want us to do this is they want us to have a service fee for each test that we do, so that we're being paid on a per test basis as opposed to a percentage. So we're allowing 6 months for them to go outside, find an appraiser, and get that service fee identified for each test. They think it's a big deal. Michael doesn't think it's going to be a big deal at all. There's only about 50 tests that we're
Well, there's only about panels, there's 10 or 12, there's probably 50 total tests, maybe a few more, but, and just the payer mix, depending on how many, I think it's gonna be a limited number of insurance companies, so if we're only looking at 3 or 4 insurance companies, it doesn't take long to see what each one pays us, and then, you know, kind of work into that. You know, if it's a whole bunch of insurance companies, and one of them pays you this, one of them pays you that, it'll take a little longer, but I think within 6 months, that should be a fair, to establish a payer mix and to establish a fee schedule off that payer mix.
And then we'll be in 100% compliance with the print creature regulations. Any other questions about it? Y'all had a copy of the contract for a little bit. If you think that I need to try to explain more. I guess I would say that we've been looking at this probably for about 3 weeks now, I guess. And, you know, we've got involved our attorney on it, so I think based on that, and where we're at, we would recommend that the board approve it.
I'll make a motion to
Sorry,
accept the
say,
contract.
anybody want to be in discussion before we even ask for a motion, but yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, you have a motion from Dr. Stephen Vossick to approve entering into the agreement. And Dwayne Griffin seconds that. And if y'all would like, you want to authorize, make the motion to authorize me to sign on behalf of the district. Okay, now any discussion, any further discussion? If not, call for the vote. All in favor? 6-0.
Thank you. We will, we'll do it. We got a couple of samples scheduled for tomorrow, just come through as a test to see, so we've got our systems in place, and then the builder will be down here next week, and we expect to be up and rolling, you know, fairly quickly. One thing before we're adjourned, expect another